Optimization is because it's so easy to do now. You just push a button and optimize everything and come back tomorrow and it'll all be solved for you. And I think that's one of the worst things you can do. People think they can push that button to optimize and take the best results, and those usually do not work into the future.
Welcome back everyone. Today we're down with Sunny J. Harris once again. Sunny, welcome back on the podcast. Good to have you here again. Looking forward to chat about your new book, your trading also, and a bunch of other stuff in between. So good to have you here again.
Excellent. Thank you, Etienne.
So for people who've not watched the first and second interview we've done together, tell them a bit more about kind of who you are and what you do as a trader.
Well, I've been trading we're coming up pretty soon here on 43 years, so 42 plus. And I started trading in 1981. And I got into it because I had retired when I was 30 from a little software company that I had. And I had a lot of money. And so I gave it to money managers because I thought that was the right thing to do. And it took them 3 weeks to lose $75,000. And while that's not a big percentage of what I had, $75,000 nevertheless is still a lot of money. So I took the money back and I said, I can do that poorly on my own. I'm going to learn how to do it. So like everything else I've done in life, I taught myself to do it. And, you can see behind me, I've got lots of books on the subjects. And I just read and read and read everything I could get my hands on. And I figured out how to do it on my own. So I've been trading ever since. And I have a website called moneymentor.com where I have everything I know. It's my own resource, so I keep all my resources there, and they're free and available to anyone who wants to go. And there's over 500 pages in the website, so they can explore. And I also do a podcast. I have a podcast called The Sunny Harris Show, and we interview famous traders and authors, people who sell their systems, and we just get to know them as people. So it's just a visit, and we've done Larry Williams and Jake Bernstein and Linda Raschke, and just 35 I think we're up to now.
That sounds very cool for sure. When people read books, sometimes I kind of get this comment a lot. People read books about trading, they kind of have all these books and they kind of get overwhelmed with all the different advice because books can contradict themselves. They can have different advice. How do you make sense of like what you read and how do you use it to actually get results on trading?
That's a very good question. I use TradeStation, and I'm an expert easy language programmer, and everything that I read, I put it into easy language, code it up, test it, and see if it works. And, you said that there's lots of different advice from lots of books. And it seems every book has different advice. And so I test it and see whether they're profitable or not. And for the most part, they're not.
That's everything for sure. That's a good point. There are some things I'm guessing you cannot code, though. Have you been able to come across things that are not impossible to code?
The things that are not possible to code are the things that people don't specify well. So if they say, well, I buy on higher highs and sell on lower lows, well, what does that mean? That you have to specify it exactly, or you can't program it. So a lot of things are kind of hand waving, where they just sort of tell you what they're doing, but don't exactly tell you what they're doing. And then, those you can't code. Oh, and I'm going to write another book called Grading the Gurus. So I wanted to write this one 20 years ago. I've been holding on to it for 20 years, and I've already done the Larry Williams chapter and the Joe Krutzinger chapter. So we'll be interviewing gurus. So there's an interview in there, and then testing of the strategy or strategies that they have revealed to me. Nothing that's proprietary to them, but Larry Williams stuff always turns out really great.
That sounds interesting. That sounds like a book I would definitely want to read on that one for sure. But it's interesting too, because I'll be curious to contrast kind of how was it on your trading before you started to code things and compared to now when things are coded? Is it you find easier, or does it like kind of like eliminate more discretion or more kind of trying to guess on different things, or is it pretty much the same, or like coded or not?
In the beginning, I used Lotus 123 and paper and a calculator. In 1981, we didn't have PCs yet. Well, we had PCs, but we didn't have trading software yet. So I would just code things by hand. I would just write out the rules and then, spreadsheet after spreadsheet of testing. And, I used pencil and paper, and I had graph paper, and I plotted all my charts by hand. And then, wrote down the numbers and tried to test them that way. And back then, there was only daily data. We didn't have any intraday data yet. And then not long after that, Tim Slater, he's the first interview we did on the podcast. Tim Slater came up with CompuTrack, which was, again, daily data, but it had a coding language so I could test things. So I used that right very, very soon after when I started trading. And then we had something that's no longer available called Master Chartist, which was for Apple computers. And I used that and data broadcasting e-signal. I used to have a Quotrack. It's about the size of a current cell phone. And it broadcast, and again, it was intraday data on this because it was real time. And you'd hold this little handheld thing and they would broadcast the data to you live. And I could watch that no matter where I was. I could actually go out and have lunch and still trade. So I used that for a while. And then we got Omega Research, which had System Writer. Again, daily data, but I could test things. There was a language. There was a rudimentary easy language in it, which Sam Tennis designed and led the programming team to do that. And then Omega Research became TradeStation. And now that's what I use. So I've been using TradeStation now and its predecessors for 37 years.
A lot of people these days kind of get that they should be coding things to test and get more data. But it's still kind of not accessible to everyone. Like you gotta learn to code, or you gotta maybe hire even a coder. What would you tell people who want to kind of gather more data? They want to code things, but they don't know how to code. Should they kind of hire someone, or should they learn to do it themselves? And how can they go about it?
I think both are a good idea. I have a client that I signed up this morning who wants to learn easy language. So, I do consulting and teach people easy language. And I have a little easy language course on my website, which is 5 1-hour sessions where Sam Tennis and I taught people how to program easy language. So 5 1-hour sessions and you can get it mostly under your belt. And then, of course, if you don't want to learn that, I'm available.
Is there any language that you find is better than other ones in terms of coding for trading? Or because there's so many platforms out there, you could like learn different platforms, different languages, but I'm guessing they don't have all the same markets or the same availability.
I have my indicators all on TradeStation, and then there's multi-charts, which is essentially the same thing. It's an older version of TradeStation. And then I do have my indicators available. Sunny Bands and the dynamic moving average histogram are available for NinjaTrader. But I had to hire a coder to do that because I don't speak C#. It's very complex. Easy language is just that. It's easy. So, I mean, and it's built for traders. It uses words like, if moving average 1 crosses over moving average 2, then buy the market. So it's really very simple and built for traders. So I'm pretty much exclusively easy language.
Tell me about the process of transferring something from one platform to the other platform. I have this algo that I've coded like a long time ago. I have a coder doing it now, but we want to make it to a different platform. But it's a different language, of course. So how do you find this easy? Is it just like a translating a language, or is it like you got to provide some context and help them out to properly kind of put the ideas of your first code into the second code?
Well, it's each of the other languages is difficult to learn. It's not immediately obvious. I'm trying to learn PineScript now, which is for TradingView. And it doesn't transfer immediately over. So it's like learning a whole new language. And then to learn any language, it's like learning to speak French. You have to learn the nouns and the verbs and put them all together.
Sounds like a lot of work, exactly, for sure.
Yes, it is.
Do you feel like as a trader, your time is well spent in terms of coding things, or are you better off focusing on different things if you want to kind of improve your trading?
I focus on my trading. In the early years, I focused on coding and testing and testing and testing. You have to. I wrote an article for Stocks and Commodities magazine once called "Testing, Testing, 1, 2, 3," where I outlined the testing process that I use to verify whether something works or doesn't work. And by works, I mean is profitable. If it doesn't make money, it doesn't work. So I did years of research and coding and testing in the beginning, and now I know what works, and I developed it for myself. And I don't spend a lot of time coding anymore. I focus on my trading.
How is the data issue? Because sometimes with different platforms, you got issues with data. You gotta have the right data or like a high quality enough data to be able to test well your strategies. Do you have this issue with TradeStation as well, or is it different?
No, the trade station's an all-in-one package. They have real-time data down to the tick, and you can even look at timed sales if you want to. And they are also a brokerage, so I can place my trades through them. So I've got real-time data, I've got brokerage, and then I've got the programming language. So it's everything's all there at once, and the fills are pretty much instantaneous. They're very fast, very accurate. So I don't have any trouble with that. If you guess something like Ninja Trader, uh, you have to decide which brokerage you want to use and which data feed you want. And there are several choices, and multi-chart is the same way. You can select your brokerage and select your data feed.
And this is something I've seen that I find interesting. There's kind of this conception about people using algos or using like technology or these codings to trade better that they won't be able to trade manually like on their own without these tools. Do you feel like that can is kind of like an invalid argument in some way? It's like people feel like if you use algos or coding and stuff, it's because you're not a good trader necessarily.
That's a good point. I'm developing an algo to trade sunny bands, and I've been working on it for 6 months now, and it's complex. And the trick is, I know the product so well that I'm almost intuitive at trading it now, but it's really hard to code something that's intuitive. So I keep working on it, and I don't have it finished yet. And some people contact me and say, "When are you going to get that done? I want it now." And those are people who just, I hate to say it, but they just want to push buttons. They want a money-making machine for them. And they're not what I would call a trader, because they're not making those decisions based on technical analysis that they've learned from the books that they've read and implementing that. They just want something that works. But there is no holy grail. There is nothing that makes money all the time.
I agree with that. It's very hard to tell people who expect like you said, a push button kind of solution that that stuff doesn't exist because then they'll go buy the next thing out there that they can buy to make it easy,
Right.
which won't work either.
I've always said you're going to spend $50,000 on your education, whether you spend it making losses and you finally learn how to trade based on the fact that you got burned a whole bunch of times, or whether you're going to spend it on getting education from someone like me, or whether you're going to go out and buy something that doesn't work and something else that doesn't work, like you said. You're going to spend a sizable amount of capital learning how to do it.
There's also that aspect of some people kind of find strategies like maybe yours or mine online. They want to learn it, but then they find out that it doesn't match their personality for some reason. Do you feel like that's an issue that's valid, or is it because they don't understand it enough, or because they didn't take the time to really understand the logic behind it, that they say it's their personality that doesn't match with it?
Yeah, that's an issue. Some people want to trade the first 2 hours of the morning and then go to work. And I always ask them, what if the market goes sideways during that first 2 hours, and then the rest of the day it either goes sharply up or sharply down? You've missed it entirely. So I'm a full-time trader. I trade from I don't trade at the open at 6:30 California time. I wait to give it the first half hour to see where it's going to go. And then I start trading after that, and I trade till 1 o'clock California time. So it's the full day. And then the cool thing about it being in California is I've got the rest of the day to write books and code and do anything else I want to do. So I've got 2 full days.
How do you manage that trading time? Is it like time directly at the chart, or do you do other things and you have alerts going on sometimes when you gotta look at the chart, or how do you kind of manage it?
I have a little indicator called Bing ticks, and it makes a bing sound every time the market goes up. It fires with every tick. So it makes a bing sound when the market goes up, a click sound if the market went sideways, and a bong sound if it goes down. And I find that I can listen to that and hear how fast it's trading, whether it's trading sideways, whether it's up or down, I'm in tune that I can't trade without it. And I've invented that many years ago because I used to call my trades into the exchange, into the floor. I had 2 traders on the floor, and they would hand signal the trades into the pit, and then the pit would signal back to them, and then they would tell me on the phone what price I was filled at. And I'd love to call and listen to the activity on the floor. I could tell from the way the guys in the background were yelling and screaming whether the market was moving quickly or sideways or, whatever. I listened to that during the crash of 87. And I found that that's sort of imperative for me. Not everybody likes all the noise in the background, but I can hear where the market's going. So I have that in the background, and I've got 5 monitors. So I have several different projects going at once. Only one monitor has TradeStation on it, and it's right here. I see it all day long.
Well, I'm very curious about this one. This is something I've never heard anyone talk about, so I'm very curious to see how that works out. But I think it's definitely a good idea. We don't really use our ears in trading that much, or having this and kind of getting a second sense of how the market behaves must be really cool to go through. Yeah. So, is there anything you want to kind of talk about or focus on, or any issue you see traders face these days that you have solution for that you want to help?
Well, I'd like to show everybody my new books. I finished, Sam Tennis and I finished writing together. He's my writing partner on this one. Actually, he's the guy that programmed all the examples. We have over 300 examples in the books, and it's 1,300 pages divided into 2 volumes. And this is the way to learn everything about easy language. So this is volume 1, Easy TradeStation's, the definitive guide to TradeStation's easy language and OOL programming. Volume 1 is 569 pages, I think. And then volume 2 is the reference guide. And it's, what did I say, 769 or something. So pick up a copy of those books. They're available at Amazon. Took me 2 years and 2 months to write them. And that was working 8 hours a day for 2 years and 2 months. It was a real intensive process, but the books are absolutely invaluable. And I think that's the way to learn. And they're written for non-programmers to read. So in book 1, I walk you through beginning TradeStation in easy language all the way through to programming their advanced object-oriented easy language with which you can do anything you want to in TradeStation.
That sounds interesting. Definitely a lot of work go into that for sure. What would you recommend people? Should they read the book from beginning to end, or do they kind of go and pick the chapters they want to master or they want help with?
Well, they need to read book 1 from beginning to end. And it's written so that it's really easy to read. I just kind of talk to people. Book 2 is the reference guide. So you'll use it, you keep it on one side of your desk and book 1 on the other side. You read stuff in book 1, and then you can look up stuff in book 2.
And this is to help people kind of code those strategies and be able to, of course, test them and I guess make indicators out of them also.
Right. And now I don't go into the testing process in this book. My Trading 102 book outlines and then gets into detail about my testing process and how um, I mean, I don't just look for net profit, for instance. I have an indicator I call my CPC index, which stands for Cardinal Profitability Constructs. So the CPC index is the product of percentage return, profit factor, and the ratio of average win to average loss. And if you multiply those three numbers together, if you come up with anything 1.2 or higher, then it's a passable system. If it's below 1.2, then your system's not going to work in real time. And Kevin Davey, in fact, did a review. There's a podcast with Kevin Davey. Unbeknownst to me, he tested my CPC index to see how valid it is. So that's a good look too.
I know a lot of people do back tests and they figure out that like they have really good results in the back test, but when they go to trade it live, the results are completely different, or they lose money when they go live with it. Can you talk about why that could be, or kind of some ways to fix that?
Well, you have to allow for a bigger win than you've ever had and a bigger loss than you've ever had. There will always be changes to the market. It changes its flavor regularly. The market right now is not trading like it did last month. And you have to allow for outliers. And you need your average trade size to be about $200 or more. So you can account for slippage and commission. I mean, those costs, a lot of people don't factor those in when they're testing. And real life is you've got to allow for slippage and commissions. Murray Ruggiero used to say you've got to allow for $50 commission and $50 slippage. So I think that's a good rule of thumb.
It's interesting because people hear some other educators, or like you said, gurus talk about price action of the past, price action in the future. It's always the same patterns and everything. And people like you who kind of see it as things change, things adapt, and it won't be always the same thing. It's going to vary.
It will. It will. My Sunny Bands, however, have been working for 36 years now with no changes, no adaptations, and no optimizations. Optimization is because it's so easy to do now. You just push a button and optimize everything and come back tomorrow and it'll all be solved for you. And I think that's one of the worst things you can do. People think they can push that button to optimize and take the best results, and those usually do not work into the future.
What do you think makes a strategy, either your Sunny Bands or something else, work long term? Is it the simplicity of it, or is there something else behind it?
The dynamic moving average is the key to the Sunny Bands, and it's a moving average. So I tested moving averages extensively and found out that whipsaw kills you. When the market's trending, which is usually only about 30% of the time, you can make money. But when it's going sideways, it's in channel driven. You've got to use a different kind of strategy in order to trade that. So you have to be able to predict in advance whether the market's sideways or trending. So realizing that moving averages kill you, I developed a moving average that is self-adjusting. That's why I call it dynamic. And it adjusts its own lengths. Normally you have to put in the length of moving average 1 and the length of moving average 2. The defaults are usually 9 and 18. And then people optimize those numbers to find out what's the best moving average, and the answer is none of them. So I invented one with I've got 3 degrees in mathematics, so I programmed calculus and linear algebra in order to create a moving average that is self-adjusting. It changes its own lengths with the speed of the market. So with every tick, the inputs are different. And that's why this one keeps working, is because it's self-adjusting.
Some people are gonna say for sure after this, are gonna say, yeah, okay, but moving average, you gotta use this with this and that. Then you can look at this and that to make it work together. But then it gets really complex at this point, and then it's like where you can always optimize things and make it work. But I like the way you do it, which is you look at the simplicity of things and then you kind of test that first, right?
Exactly.
Interesting. What do you get ideas of strategies? If you wanna, let's say, have a new test you wanna run for fun, where do you get these ideas? Is it from books or any other source for these ideas?
Well, I get them from books. I do. I've read 750 books now on the market. So I get ideas from the books. I also get ideas from clients who contact me and want me to program them. So I test all those ideas. And again, most of them don't work. But I had a guy come to me and say he found the best system in the world. It's called stochastics, which I also tested 100 years ago. And he wanted to go short every time they crossed over on top and go long every time they crossed over on the bottom. So I said to him, you don't need to spend your money on me. I'll tell you already, this doesn't work. And he said, oh, yes, it does. I look, I've drawn all these lines. It works. It works. I said, all right, I'll program it for you. So I programmed it and showed him that he would lose lots of money if he did that. And that's the last I heard from him.
Does that mean that a trader cannot use these tools to trade? Does that mean that you have to develop your own tools if you want to kind of trade well in this market? Or does that mean that you can have to kind of put things together and figure out something that works?
You need to put something together that other people have not done. The indicators that are standardly available in all the software packages have been tested and stood the test of time, but still, you've got the same problem when the market's whipsawing. Stochastics isn't going to work. RSI is not going to work. MACD is not going to work. So all the things that people just standardly use have problems in a whipsaw market. Anything that's channel driven, they're going to experience losses.
Some people might want to try to not trade when it's whipsawing or something, but I guess that's not really possible, not really feasible.
Well, to decide whether it's whipsawing or trending, of course, you can use ADX. That's always a good one. ADX, if you make it short enough time frame. I use an ADX of 3 bars and watch the market that way to see whether it's trending or not. And ADX, when it's rising, you're in a trend. It doesn't tell you whether you're in an uptrend or a downtrend. It just says trending. And when it's moving down, then you know the market's moving sideways. So that's a good filter for people. But I tested many years ago, tested a strategy that I read in one of Jake Bernstein's books. It was using the MACD for the crossovers and the ADX as a filter to see whether or not the market was trending. And then you only take the trending markets in the direction of the MACD. And that actually worked pretty well. I used that on 15-minute data for several years, and it worked quite well.
I know the shit comes up a lot is people want to know what's the best period for their indicator to look at. How do you get to figure this out? Is it based on, because I'm guessing you could always over optimize it and then it doesn't work, but how do you kind of find out the best period for the tools you're using?
You test them all. In the Grading the Guru books, I'm testing 1 minute, 5 minute, 15 minute, 60-minute, daily, and weekly, all. And the results are presented in the book. I find that the S&P, which is my primary instrument, trades really well on a 15-minute and a 5-minute chart. So I watch both. I also watch 1 minute to refine my entries, but the 15 and 5 minutes for the signals. On stocks, I use daily data. I find that stocks don't trade nicely. By nicely, I mean form the patterns and the trends. Stocks don't trade nicely on intraday charts. So I use daily charts. And sometimes, well, I write a newsletter on Sunday nights called The Sunny Side of the Street. And in there, I go through 17 different symbols: gold, oil, bonds, Bitcoin, and several stocks, and the E-mini, of course. And I analyze my sunny bands and my dynamic moving average for each one of those on the Sunday night newsletter. But I find that stocks do really well on daily charts.
Interesting. Definitely a good name for newsletter, by the way. So I'm gonna have to have a look at this for sure. It's a good one. I like it. So yeah, I know we covered a lot here. We covered a bunch of different things. People have to do their own tests eventually, of course. What can they kind of learn more about what you do and find out your books if they want to learn more and get started with this?
Well, just look up Sonny Harris on Amazon.com. All 8 of them will come up. Well, 7 of them will come up. One book I wrote with my good friend Linda Blair, the actress of Exorcist fame. So I wrote a book with her, which is not about trading at all, but the other 7 are all about trading. So Trading 101, Trading 102, and a whole bunch more. Trade Station Made Easy was one I wrote in, I think I published it in 2011. Look up those books. Trading 102 is the one where I go into my testing process and show you exactly how I test and how I group things together to find the best fit. And it's not just optimizing.
Definitely a lot there. I'm looking at your page on Amazon. Definitely a lot of books that people can go through if they want to become serious about trading. This is a big resource for people to go through. So I appreciate that. That's awesome. We'll leave a link below the podcast show notes. They can check it out and connect with you and start to read your books directly there.
I also have on my website, I have a full bookstore that gives all the trading books in alphabetical order. So if you want to go there and take a look at books, I've got a beginner's reading list, intermediate reading list, and then the full list of all the books. So you can just click on them and buy them right there. It takes you straight to the Amazon page.
That sounds good. I'll have to have a look at that too. I didn't see that before. That's cool. Awesome. Thank you, Cindy, for your time. I know this has been good advice for our listeners here. I appreciate your time and the advice you give to them here. I appreciate it a lot. And hopefully you can catch up soon and discuss more about your trading and kind of how you're doing.